For all of our dads in the crowd, well, happy belated Father's Day. I hope you guys had a nice and restful afternoon, evening, day yesterday. Um, and I'm excited to be able to present this with all of you. This is a subject that's very near and dear to my heart, obviously, because I'm a guy, right? And men's health is important. I feel like, although it is implied in a lot of different situations, there's a lot of research about it as far as being able to receive that research or take the time to slow down. That is where things come in a little bit differently, right? So, without further ado, I present to you Men's Health Mastery. This is an advanced 5 essentials class with Discover Chiropractic. If you aren't sure what the 5 essentials are, that is okay, right? We are going to be going over that. A little bit about myself to begin with. My name is Dr. Darren Doss. Most people just call me Doss or Dr. Doss. Either one of those is fine. If you can pronounce my first name correctly, feel free to call me that as well, okay? For myself, I've been a chiropractor for almost 7 years, right? I've had the wonderful opportunity to go all over the world to serve different communities and to be present with the nervous systems of gentlemen from ages 100 to newborns. Right? I also do a lot of teaching, a lot of volunteering all across the nation, and I am also a member of a group of gentlemen that has had the great fortune of leading an annual men's retreat for the last 5 years. Our first one started at 26 people, and our largest one has seen about 100 gentlemen. So we do that every year. The reason that we're all here, right, is because there is a crisis of modern masculinity. It may not seem like it, right, but it is a slow boil, right? We've got mental health struggles, we've got loneliness and a loss of purpose. There's a decline in testosterone levels, chronic stress, metabolic dysfunction, and a loss of self, right? Men all over the world are reporting feeling lonelier than ever, more disconnected than ever, and they're suffering more than ever as chronic disease goes up, right? And that especially shouldn't be a thing in our country because we invest so much in healthcare. So let's talk about what we are going to be discussing. What are the 5 essentials? The 5 essentials are the 5 pillars of health that we operate with in our office. The first one being core chiropractic or a maximized nervous system, okay? The second one being nutrition, right? The third being mindset, right? The fourth being oxygen and exercise, and the last one being detoxifying your body. Now, a lot of people talk about the first four as being important pillars of health, but the last one is just as important, right? For me, my personal favorite, besides chiropractic, obviously, because I'm standing in front of you for a reason, but I think that mindset is exceptionally important. And I think that you can do a lot of things through changing who you are on the inside or developing, right? But let's talk about essential number one. We're talking about the nervous system, the master system, okay? The way that it works is that your brain sends messages down your spinal cord. Those messages pass through your spine, out through your nerves, and that's what gives life to every single cell, gland, organ, muscle, ligament, tendon. All of those things need information from your brain in order to function the way that they should, right? And if they're not functioning the way that they should, are you going to be healthy or are you going to be unhealthy? Unhealthy, right? So think about your nervous system like a flowing river, right? That's why I've got this beautiful graphic in there. Plus, I thought it was just really awesome, right? If that river is flowing, you see how everything is lush, the foliage is green, whatever is receiving that water or that information from your brain is going to be able to do what it needs, right? But unfortunately, not every nervous system operates that way. In fact, we often find ourselves faced with the tale of two rivers, right? And keep in mind that the nervous system runs the man. You don't heal, recover, think, or perform without 100% communication from your brain throughout the rest of the body, right? So if we have a river that runs like this, how is that person's digestive system working, right? That green foliage represents your prostate, it represents your nervous system, it represents your cardiovascular system, right? Now, on the opposite end, we've got this over here, right? How is this person's hormones functioning? How are their muscles doing? How's their digestion? How's their sexual performance, their mood, their recovery, their sleep? They're not getting what they need from the body because they're not getting that flow of information. Now, you can see here that there are still some plants that are thriving on that riverbank, right? But ultimately, those things are dying off or they're in a decline, right? And that is why we do the work that we do in order to make sure that we can reconnect the brain to the body so that we can get that river of health flowing again. Now, a really important question that I always like to pose at this point is, say somewhere way upriver, they open up the floodgates and a dam is broken and this river just gets refilled, right? Are all these plants going to turn green immediately? No. Healing takes time, right? And chiropractic care does its best work over time, but those plants are not going to regrow unless that river starts to flow again. Does that make sense? Cool. So, to put this into perspective, right, there's a balance that's supposed to happen in every single person, right? And if your nervous system is working the way that it should, you should be balanced in between fight or flight, or balance between rest or digest. Fight or flight is your sympathetic nervous system, right? It's your need to survive, okay? Some physical responses that might help, right? If you are in danger, right? Preparing your body to take action, or an increased heart rate, faster breathing, tense muscles, right? Releasing your cortisol so that it floods your bloodstream with glucose so you can get out of there, right? Say that you're being cornered by a mountain lion, for instance, right? And rest and digest is your parasympathetic nervous system. This is where you're able to feel safe. This is where you're able to rest. This, unfortunately, is where a lot of modern men don't lie. Right? There is a skew in that balance, which leads to too much activation in this direction, leading to stress, anxiety, burnout, and exhaustion. Right? Raise your hand if you felt exhausted in here recently. Right? Raise your hand if you might feel a little bit exhausted today. And that happens, right? And that's just the current state of the world. And, you know, fortunately and unfortunately, as men, we are blessed with a beautiful burden, right? We're often supposed to be the protectors, the providers, right? We are the leaders, right? And as the saying goes, you know, the strongest workhorse carries the heaviest load, right? And in order to do that, we need to make sure that we are functioning at our best because we do all of those things, okay? So why do we get stuck in survival mode? Any answers out there? Stress, for sure. It's a huge one, right? That is actually the answer, right? Stress is the number one thing that shifts the nervous system. Also, being subluxated, which does cause additional stress on your nervous system. For those of you who aren't familiar with chiropractic, subluxation is the term for one of the bones in your spinal column moves out of the area that it's supposed to. And instead of protecting the nerves that exit the spine, it starts to irritate those nerves over time, cutting off the flow of that river that we saw earlier, right? So when men live in a state of chronic dysregulation or stress, what happens in your body is that cortisol rises. That is your stress hormone, right? Testosterone falls, your libido decreases, recovery slows, fat accumulates. And then we turn to other things like escapism, right? Loss of control, numbness, okay? And how do we get our nervous systems to adapt? By releasing that stress, by changing that environment, either externally or internally, because both are just as important. So, first thing that you can do to change their environment from a neurological standpoint, and one of the most simple and most overlooked things that you can do, change your posture, right? Yeah, I know Willem Dafoe is hitting a crazy stance right there, but look at his presence, right? Look at the straight spine. Look at the just straight up, he doesn't care about anything, right? And what he's there to serve his purpose and embody his full truth. And what is a better example of masculinity than that? I know it's kind of silly, right? But seriously, you know, it's how you represent yourself, how you hold yourself, how you carry yourself. And I thought that these other pictures were just really good examples of people doing their thing. I mean, Brad Pitt looks extremely dirty in this photo, right? He looks like he just got off working like a 12-hour shift at a mechanic shop, right? But if you look at this, you're like, man, there's something about that guy, right? He's got it going on. And that's because he's holding himself and he's aware of his presence and his power and his posture, right? So posture not only influences, right, the presence that you have in a room, but also your nervous system function. The farther forward that your head juts over your shoulders, the less that your brain can communicate with your body. If you cut off the nerve supply to your brainstem, right, you are going to display higher signs of aggression, okay, which is why dogs do this before they bite somebody. You start to wear and tear on the ligaments and those aspects, and those messages that you're trying to send down that river, they don't make it downstream. It also shortens your breathing capacity, compressing on the top of the lungs and pushing down to your diaphragm. It affects your hormones, your circulation, your digestion, obviously your pain and movement, right? If your body was designed to be centered and stacked on top of each other, then the farther forward that you hold your head here, right, you're going to start to get pain. So over time, those muscles are going to get tight. In fact, there was a study done in an old folks home, right? That they could calculate the person who was most likely to die next by how far forward their head was over their shoulders. Isn't that interesting? So we've already talked about identity and influence, right? But something else that I think that is really, really important to double down on is identity, right? Or excuse me, let's talk about a little bit more how chiropractic helps. Sorry. So chiropractic helps with posture, right? We can talk about the human potential model. We did kind of discuss this already, so it's kind of redundant. But chiropractic helps to improve the input from your body. So there are two things, right? There are two systems in the body in terms of your sensation. There's outgoing and then there's ingoing. Your subluxation pattern actually happens on the ingoing, okay? So better input improves better brain function. I don't know if we have any computer engineers out there or anybody that works with code. Have you heard the term garbage in, garbage out? Right? It's the same thing with your brain. If you're receiving information that doesn't fit the system, right? Say you're not completely aware of where your ankles are in space, or you're not getting proper feedback from your body, right? That goes into your brain, and your brain is going to give you improper feedback about what you should do. That's how we get degeneration. That's how we get arthritis. That's how we get these slow chronic stress diseases like cardiovascular disease or diabetes, right? Your body stops getting the proper input and then it produces an improper output, right? So when you improve that brain function, you improve your regulation, and better regulation improves pain, stress, strength, recovery, digestion, energy, focus, even decision making. It's been shown that when you receive a chiropractic adjustment, it actually goes up into your thalamus and relays to your prefrontal cortex, which is your higher order decision making on whether or not you should do something. And that's actually one of the things that shuts down during stressful situations. Okay. So better output creates better lives. There's so much more than pain relief. Right? And so the main point is that a dysregulated nervous system asks in fight or flight, how do I survive today? What's wrong? What do I need to fear? Right? And a regulated nervous system asks, what's possible? What's my purpose? What should I build? Right? Or what do I want to become? Who do I want to become? When pain decreases, stress decreases, sleep improves, breathing improves, and neurological function improves. And that's what this whole thing is all about, right? People often make better decisions because their brains are operating from a state of safety rather than threat. So, essential number 2, fueling your masculinity, right? So the basics, right? You want to start with elimination. Cut out anything that isn't made by God, right? Or that doesn't naturally occur in nature. Because foods by man, right? We've done a lot of things to mess that up, right? Genetically modified organisms, right? We're injecting hormones and antibiotics into our meats, right? That's why you want to change your meats and your dairy. You want to make sure you're hydrated. One of the simplest things to do to change your life, right, besides posture, is drinking water. And I feel like everybody I talk to acts like it's the hardest thing of all time, right? Just drinking a little bit of water, it will completely change your mood, it will change your situation, it will change your energy levels. Water is what allows your body to do complex processes and functions inside of your systems. Get rid of your dirty dozen. If you're not familiar with what that is, the Environmental Working Group has a list, okay? And then add supplements from there, right? So your foods by God are, find this description, right? You got your foods grown in fertile soil, which automatically rules out anything grown in the United States, about 90% of it. Right? Your natural pollinated seeds, you want your pure, clean spring or filtered water, right? If it is filtered water, make sure you add your minerals or electrolytes. Your organic, local fruits and veggies, whole sprouts, cracked or salt fermented grains, fats extracted from natural plant and animal sources, naturally raised animals, obviously. It's going to be your grass-fed, finished beef or free-range chicken and eggs, because bioaccumulation is a process, right? Who's heard the term, you are what you eat? That's basically what bioaccumulation means, right? So if you're eating an animal that's stressed, if you're eating an animal that has a whole bunch of toxins inside of it, if you're eating an animal that has tumors, right, and they grind all of that up and make it into a nice hot dog or a burger at Burger King, right? What happens to all of that, all those toxins that that animal had in its blood? That gets soaked into your system and it becomes a part of you. And it does take an effect, right? So you want your full fat raw dairy. It's going to be your milk, cheese, butter, your fermented dairy, which is kefir on my side. Vitamins and minerals found naturally in food. Minimal use of natural sweeteners, even stevia, right? It's an endocrine disruptor. They're finding out a lot of information that it can actually force forces your body to act like there's an estrogen rise as well. Um, Lacto-fermented vegetables, unrefined salt, natural herbs and spices, generous amounts of raw and living foods, right? There was a study that I'm going to be talking about later. There's a dentist by the name of Weston A. Price, and he talked about how indigenous diets had better facial structure and teeth, right? And how when they started to switch over to westernized diets, they actually started to get cavities and their faces became malnourished and lacked development. You want to cook with your fire, oven, stove, or smokehouse, and then use food for your sustenance. Don't be wasteful, right? And your foods by man, they're grown in depleted soil. You got your GMO, hybridized seeds, your polluted tap water, pesticides, refined grains, fats unnaturally extracted. When's the last time you were able to squeeze a vegetable and get some oil out of there? Never, right? It's crazy. Unnaturally raised animals, stress, confinement, your skim milk, synthetic vitamins and minerals, overall use of sweeteners, canned foods, frozen vegetables, refined iodized salts, MSG, overabundance, overprocessed foods, dead foods, right? And cooking with your microwave or frying in your damaged oils. And then food overeaten or overindulged in. So this is what I was talking about. This is Weston A. Price right here. On the front, the cover of the book that I have, it says, man's rise and fall has been a measure of his ability to learn and obey nature's laws of life. Right? And I thought that was such a profound quote. So what they're showing here is they're actually showing Australian Aboriginals and what they look like before and after introducing the Western or the modernized diet, right? So having these like nice facial bone structures, teeth were solid. You can see that their maxillas are more prominent, right? As they started to introduce these different foods, you can see that the Aboriginals who actually shared, right, or exchanged foods with these different areas, they were the ones who started to get cavities. In fact, cavities weren't really a thing back in the day. Teeth were extremely strong, and they said that it was less than 1 in 1,000 teeth had dental caries in the Aboriginal population, right? So it's something to think about when you're selecting whether or not you want to have a quick fix or whether you want to have your raw organic foods, right? Your body was designed for that. Your bones need that stress. You need that feedback. And also you need those minerals and that nutrition, because everything that we've cooked and everything that we've processed, especially once again, if it was grown in the United States, the level of nutrition has decreased significantly. So back to the basics, right? Hydration. Water is involved in every aspect of physiology and performance for males, especially for everybody, but for males too. Muscles are 75% water, right? So your strength, endurance, and recovery all depend on hydration. So if you're dehydrated and you're expecting to do any type of physical exertion, automatically cut that by potentially, assuming that you're not down to zero, right? About 10 to 15%, right? It supports testosterone production by helping to regulate cortisol and stress. If you're dehydrated, your cortisol levels shoot up through the roof, right? It improves your blood flow, sexual performance through healthy circulation, and enhances focus, memory, and mental clarity by supporting brain function, right? Your brain is fat and water and salt. It's the whole thing, right? It lubricates joints, fascia, spinal discs, and for better movement and resilience, and it accelerates your recovery by transporting nutrients and removing waste products. It supports your sleep quality and your overnight hormone production, which is really, really key, because that is where you get all of your growth hormone for my people that are looking to make some gains during exercise, right? Or to build muscle. Add electrolytes as well, because that's how your brain and your body function and send signals. So the rule of thumb is half of your body weight in ounces daily, okay? Here's go. So some of our foundational mastery, right? For protein, you want roughly 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight, right? That's an effective target if you're active, if you want to exercise. Fat is not the villain, right? In fact, low fat diets inhibit testosterone production, your libido, and your hormone balance. A couple of important vitamins and minerals. Zinc is literally like the male mineral, right? It's so important for so many things in the body. They can't exactly track what it does, but they know it affects testosterone production, sperm production, immune function, wound healing, dopamine regulation, which is actually really, really important, right? And your thyroid function, okay? Low zinc can contribute to low testosterone, reduced libido, erectile dysfunction, poor recovery, hair loss, low sperm count, and a reduced sense of taste or smell. And for fun fact, the best food source for zinc is actually oysters. So, also beef, lamb, pumpkin seeds, and eggs. So we got vitamin D, which is technically more of a hormone than a vitamin to your body, right? Its receptors are found all throughout the body: your testicles, your brain, your immune cells, your muscle tissue. Everything needs vitamin D. And fun fact, the daily recommended allowance or the daily recommended amount that they tell you to take is just the bare minimum to not get rickets. So you need significantly more vitamin D than you think. And most of it should be generated through sun exposure. And how many of us are getting multiple hours of sun exposure every day? None of us, right? So vitamin D is a non-negotiable, okay? It's associated with higher testosterone, better fertility, better mood, greater strength, right? More dopamine or regulated dopamine, serotonin, and inflammation, right? So it helps with your mood, and it helps your body fight off pretty much any chronic disease because inflammation is going to be present in those. If it's low, you get fatigue, depression, poor immunity, and lower hormone production, right? Magnesium is the recovery mineral. Everybody should know you should be taking magnesium all the time, right? It's dropped by about like 40 to 90% estimated range in the last 40 years in the soil. So you're not getting what you need, right? And magnesium participates in over 300 enzymatic reactions. And most people are deficient just because they're not eating or they're not supplementing, right? Boron is actually a really surprising mineral that you need. It's hidden for testosterone. It's one of the most overlooked minerals in men's health. Research suggests that it helps to increase free testosterone so that your body can use it. It reduces your inflammatory markers. It actually helps improve vitamin D utilization so that if you're taking that, it works well. Supports your bone health, improves your cognitive performance, and you can get it from raisins, prunes, avocados, and almonds. Selenium is what you need for fertility, right? Those come from Brazil nuts. I'm not sure if you guys have heard about that, but that's also a well-common thing that I feel like we needed to throw in there. So it's your sperm quality, your thyroid function, and your antioxidant protection. A couple extras are ashwagandha, specifically KSM-66, helps to reduce excessive cortisol activity. Nitric oxide is the king of blood flow, right? It helps to relax the blood vessels to let your blood flow through, which helps with sexual health, brain function, athletic performance, heart health, and you can get it from beets and leafy greens. Also, your body generates more of it if you breathe through your nose and get sunlight, okay? And omega-3s, right? They support your healthy blood vessels, your healthy cell membranes, and it's extremely anti-inflammatory, and your B complex for your energy, specifically B12, okay? Any questions about any of that? Oh, I know we're really rushing these, we're throwing a lot at you here. The modern man's nutrition problem is that most of us are overfed and undernourished, right? We consume an excess amount of calories because your body feels like it needs more in order to function, but we don't have the efficient amount of nutrition or the minerals in there, right? So we're chronically stressed, we sleep poor, we eat ultra processed foods, and we're deficient in key nutrients required for hormone production so you can feel like you can break out of that cycle, okay? The result is that you have lower testosterone, higher cortisol, reduced fertility, poor libido, brain fog, et cetera, and motivation, right? And the body can't create optimal performance from suboptimal raw materials. Now, the interesting thing about this is that when you start to fix that problem and you raise your testosterone levels, right, you start to see changes in behavior and decision making. This was a really interesting study that I found from the University of Bonn that talked about how testosterone actually increases honesty in men, regardless to negative consequences, right? Now, if that doesn't sound like a man standing in his own power, then I don't know what does, right? Because what's safer than somebody who can tell you something that they know that you don't want to hear, right? Always can trust that person because you know that regardless of what happens, they're going to have your back, or you can count on them to openly disagree with you. And that's going to be a safer person because you know that their intentions are true and they're being honest, right? So that makes a big difference for the women in our lives as well, which is why it's not just important for us, our physical health, our fitness, right? But it's important for our communities, right? Our daughters, our loved ones, our mothers, to make sure that we have men who are regulated, who are honest, and can stand in their own power. So for our hormones, testosterone requires, we've talked about protein, zinc, magnesium, cholesterol, and vitamin D, right? Emphasis on cholesterol, right? So many people are on statins, right? If you're suppressing your body's ability to generate cholesterol, then it's going to have a direct effect on your hormones, right? So poor nutrition creates the low energy, low libido, brain fog, and weight gain. But in terms of male hormones, testosterone is actually third on the hierarchy. The first thing is insulin, right? And that determines where your blood sugar goes, whether or not your body is going to be building or whether it's going to be breaking down. Okay. The next thing is cortisol, right? Your stress hormone is going to be the first thing to start to take the precursors that become testosterone, right? So if your body is under a lot of stress, you're not going to produce the testosterone that you need, right? How many of us in here feel like we might be under some stress, right? So fixing that is important. And then lastly is testosterone. So we got to make sure we're regulating our blood sugar, balancing our stress, and then producing the hormones that we need. So many hormone problems are actually lifestyle problems, especially in the United States, right? And then lastly, for sexual health and performance, it's affected by your blood flow, right? So nitrous oxide helps. Nervous system function, getting adjusted actually does wonders for erectile dysfunction, right? Not that you'll ever hear anybody say that out loud, right? But it does. Okay, I've had that conversation. Sleep, metabolic health, testosterone, and dopamine are all also affected or all also affect your sexual health and performance. So sexual dysfunction is actually a health problem first, and then a bedroom problem second. All right, these are two supplements that I take on a regular basis. I might have told a few of you here about these. Drenamine is it helps with your adrenal function, right? So if you find yourself in really high levels of stress on a regular basis, I take these on an almost daily basis, and they help me regulate. I feel like they help me not make as much cortisol, and I literally feel the difference in being able to stay grounded and make situations or make calm decisions in hectic situations, or communicate openly and have tough conversations, right? The second one is a supplement called Men's Plus by a company called Nophoric, right? We don't sell that. We can sell the Drenamine, but you can also buy it on Amazon as well if you like, right? But if you want to sit down and talk about some different things that might be helpful for you, then we can. But this has all types of amazing things in it that helps to regulate and boost your testosterone levels. I had a friend who was 30 at the time, and we did a test because he felt like he was always tired. His testosterone levels was 190, right? Should have been somewhere like closer to 1,000. So he took this for a month. They say take it for 3 months in order to get the maximum effect, but he took it for a month, right? And it doubled his testosterone level, reaching about 380. And he noticed a really big visual change. So I always tell people because I feel like it helps me, right? Another thing that has to do with nutrition that's really important for men is fasting, right? So for those of you who are unfamiliar with fasting or who haven't done it, this might be your sweet spot, right? Maybe starting with intermittent fasting, right? And that means that you're only eating for a specific window, which could be 6 to 8 hours a day, okay? They also call that circadian eating, or starting with circadian eating. So you basically eat when the sun comes up, and then you have your last meal before the sun goes down. And your body does amazing things, right? It helps with your sleep, improves your mood, right? Fix your digestive issues. But the longer you fast, the more benefits you have, right? So when your glycogen depletion starts to happen at 12 to 24 hours, then you have your growth hormone start to rise, right? Which is going to make a huge effect on your muscle mass or your body's muscle building. Your early autophagy also begins, which means that anything that's dysfunctional inside of your system, right? Cancer cells, cells that are broken down, they start to break apart, and your body will recycle that and use that for fuel, right? And that's at 12 to 24 hours, right? In 24 to 36 hours, you start to produce ketones. So your body is going to boost your sensitivity to ketones as well. And once you produce those, you start to get a little bit of an influx of energy, right? Your insulin levels, they start to drop, which means that your body will become more insulin sensitive, which changes a lot of different things for your biochemistry, and your inflammation markers decrease. So that means that any of that chronic pain that you've been having, right, that knee or that old ankle injury that keeps coming back to bother you, will start to go away. Now, when we get to 36 to 48 hours, ketones become your primary fuel. So your body is literally switching to a primarily fat burning state. Most people run by burning glucose or sugar, right? Especially in the United States. But once you get here, your body switches over to burning fat, right? And if you come off of that fast effectively, if you don't go straight back into the donuts or the sugary drinks, right? Your body will maintain that state, becoming more sensitive to fats and burn fats as a primary fuel instead, right? And then when we get our peak autophagy at 48 to 72 hours, right? This is where you're just breaking down all kinds of things, right? This is where you're killing cancer, right? Your damaged proteins, your damaged cell organelles, all of your inflammatory factors start to go down. And then when amazing things start to happen here, right? After 72 hours, your body will start to activate stem cells to go to different places that you've damaged over time. And it will start to actively heal and repair these tissues. It gives your body a break from constant digestion, right? Human beings weren't made to eat 3 square meals a day every day, right? We jokingly toss the term psyop around in this office, but honestly, it's just there's so much information out there that's been regulated by a multi-billion-dollar industry, and people in these meetings are having they're making decisions for the good of the United States based off of how much money they're going to make their shareholders, right? And that's just the fact. And then when we get into that deep fasted state, this is optimized hormonal repair, mental and spiritual introspection. Some people require medical supervision. I wouldn't immediately jump into a 1 week fast. Probably stick to somewhere in the 24 to 36 hour range, especially if this is your first time doing that. Okay. A couple of fasting tips: you want to stay hydrated. So water, mineral water. You can also have black coffee, right? Because it's not going to break your fast, but adding electrolytes in there as well. Okay. Listen to your body, right? So you don't want to keep fasting if you're getting double vision, right? If you feel like you're going to pass out. Okay. Sometimes you can get through that with just a little bit of salt, right? Because your body doesn't have enough electrolytes. But I would propose that for people who are more advanced at fasting. Okay. The consistency is what matters, right? You can do a 1 week fast once and then never fast again in your life, or you can do a 24-hour fast every other week and make huge changes. Okay, we did a whole class on this. I did a 1 week fast at the end of last year and lost 20 pounds in 7 days. Right? But I'm not saying to go do that, right? I've been fasting about 1 day a week for the duration of that whole year, and then doing 3-day fasts once a month. So it took me all year to build up to that. And I'm not sure I'm going to do that again this year because that was crazy. But maybe, And then also make sure that you're training smart. Like, don't go try to hit a PR at the gym if you haven't eaten in 3 days. I feel like, they say it's common sense, but I feel like sometimes it's not that common. So we always got to make sure we put that out there, okay? And break your fast the right way. Bone broth is a great way to do that because it's really easy on the system, right? It's good. You want some probiotics in there because after 24 hours, your body will start to kill off the bacteria inside of your gut, right? Which is good because you start to lose that bad bacteria. And if you can replace it with good bacteria using probiotics, using probiotic foods like kefir or sauerkraut, right? Kimchi, those kinds of things, it will really help. And then if you're in doubt in any way, shape, or form, whether or not you should stop your fast, I recommend that you do if you're a beginner at it, okay? Essential number 3, mindset. As a man thinketh in his heart, so shall he be. I kind of jump forward to this one because I feel like this was the one that's been on my mind so much, right? But the number one thing that I like to corner with mindset is your identity, right? People think identity, and the first question that I think is who you are, right? Who are you? Who do you think you are, right? But my first question that I propose to you is, where do you make your decisions from, right? So I've been tossing this term around lately called mental topography, right? So it's the map of your mind. Everybody's mind has a place of fear. Everybody's mind has a place of ego, a place of purpose, of principle, right? And when you're making key decisions or when you're having serious conversations, we have to actively be aware where that's coming from. You have to locate it on the map, right? Are you seeking comfort? Are you seeking security? Are you just avoiding something? Are you looking for status or validation or appearance in some way, shape, or form? And I'm not saying that any of these are wrong, right? Everybody's a human being. You're going to come from these places sometime. But the first step to mastering who you are or what your identity is just being aware, right? Self-awareness. Your purpose, right? It could be, are you seeking service? Are you seeking growth? Are you on a mission? Or is it principle? Are you convicted? Are you coming from a place of integrity or a place of discipline, right? So just be aware of your mental topography next time you have a hard conversation, the next time you talk yourself out of doing something or talk yourself into doing something, right? What are you allowing? Where is it coming from? What voice are you listening to? right? So some books that I feel like have really helped to shape my journey as a man, especially as a leader, are these five right here. The Alter Ego Effect by Todd Herman. He is a sports psychologist who has worked with a bunch of different people. And what he does is he helps people who struggle during what they call like crunch time or struggle with being clutch, as I would say, right? So somebody who performs very well in practice, they've got all the things that they need to succeed, but they just can't seem to close the deal whenever it pops up, right? This is a great book for that. Extreme Ownership is a great book on how to lead from any position, right? Regardless of whether you're in front of the pack, at the back of the pack, or in dead center, right? It teaches that everybody is responsible for 100% of the things that happen around them, right? So if I'm at work, right, and there's a car accident outside and somebody drives over and passes out in the front seat, right? If that person dies, or if that person gets out, they come in here, they ask for help, right? If there's a drunk person walking through the parking lot and they walk through the front door, right, and they start accosting customers, right, I'm always responsible for what happens in this office, regardless of what it is, because that's leadership. And honestly, that's manhood, right? The Big Leap. This one is one that I read recently that is potentially one of the best books I've ever read in my entire life. And the reason that it is because it discusses something called your upper limiting problem or your upper limit problem, right? Gay Hendricks proposes that the reason that you aren't where you are, where you want to be in your life, isn't because you haven't done the work, right? It's not because you don't deserve it, but it's because you struggle with the amount of positivity you can hold in one point in your life, right? Does anybody ever have that feeling when things are going good? You look around and you go, things might be going a little too good right now. Like, what's going on? Like, I'm waiting for that other shoe to drop. Like, what's happening, right? He proposes that in that moment, you start to subconsciously sabotage yourself, right? You start to think different thoughts. Oh, this can't be right. I can't be in this position. Like, I don't deserve this. I'm not worthy of this. What's happening, right? Or maybe that person that I'm trusting, maybe they're acting a little fishy, right? And it's because that person has an upper limiting problem, right? There are 4 upper limiting problems, right? But to name a couple, one of them is the fear of outshining others. You don't want to get to where you know you can be because you have a friend or you have family members or you have people or peers, right? That you don't want to look bad because they're standing next to you. One of them is the fear that you're inherently flawed. Maybe I don't deserve happiness because I've done all of these things in the past and I'm just too messed up, right? So if either one of those resonate with you, I guarantee you should read this book. It's one of the most powerful books I've read in a long time, right? Men's Work by Connor Beaton is just an all around like gut punch in the best way possible, right? It's a very necessary and very hard look in the mirror about how you became who you are, right? Are these actions or the responses that you're saying, are they popular culture? Is it your father? Is it your trauma, right? Are we seeking attention? This is one of the foundational books that we have everybody read or listen to if you're an audiobook type of person. I like to hit the gym and do an audiobook because I feel like it helps me pass the time and stay engaged in 2 different things at once, right? But also 100% a must listen or must read. And then the last one here is a book called Man Uncivilized by Trevor Bone. This one's a little bit spicier, right? There's some hot takes in this one for sure. But I believe ultimately he does bring up a lot of valid points, right? And the main distinction is that manhood has become too civilized, right? It's become a commodity. It's become something that you can that's been pushed on us as a culture. When truly you can't define a man, right? The only thing that can define a man is himself, truthfully, and the God that made him, right? That's what I believe. And because of the civilization of manhood, right, there has been a generation of men that are willing to compromise or willing to pretend there's something that they're not. And that dissonance, that cognitive dissonance makes them dangerous, right? Because if you're constantly being nice, right? If you're constantly thinking like, oh, I bent over backwards, so I deserve this, right? Then that creates issues. And if you don't have a problem standing up and being like, no, like I don't want to do that, or no, this isn't for me, right? Then you are going to constantly put yourself in an area of stress. And that stress can cause some things to bend and some things to break. Um, so I threw in a proverb in there, right? It's, let the wise listen and add to their learning, and let the discerning get guidance. I guarantee you, every one of these people in here can come up here and give a way better speech than I can, right? So that's why I threw all these books in here, because a lot of what I know and a lot of what I've found and experienced in my life is where this comes from. And then that brings us to Stoicism, right? It's an ancient Greek philosophy found in Athens. It focuses on self-control and rational thinking and teaches how to live a good and meaningful life, right? So it guides individuals to focus on rational thinking, inner strength, and self-control, ultimately, right? The core beliefs is that not everything is under your control, right? You got to focus on what you can. All right, some days you're going to wake up and you're going to hear that your best friend got killed. Some days you're going to wake up and you're going to get a call that somebody you love has cancer. Some days you're going to wake up and you're going to feel like everybody abandoned you and you have to stand on top of this mountain alone when you thought you had a team, right? And you can't control that. You just have to focus on what you can. Only your thoughts, actions, and reactions truly belong to you, okay? Peace comes from accepting the truth. In fact, true peace comes from controlling your inner world rather than your external circumstances. And once you do that, you'll find that the external world will change to match you. So your four main virtues here of Stoicism are wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. And I think personally, if a man is following those four virtues, I don't think that, he could be led astray, right? Meditations by Marcus Aurelius is like the classic textbook for Stoicism. This dude was just spitting heat into a notebook for years and years, and it's been around for forever, right? And then we got to devotion, right? The last aspect of identity. Every man serves something. What do you serve? Pose that question. Is it your family, right? Is it the God above? Is it a challenge? Are you serving yourself? Got to ask ourselves these questions and face these answers as we go along our journeys, especially as men. So whether he realizes it or not, a man's going to be devoted to comfort or growth, discipline or distraction, purpose or pleasure, right? You can't serve two masters at the same time. His future or his impulses, right? The quality of a man's life is often determined by what he has chosen to worship with his time, energy, and attention, right? It's not just what you say, but what have you done? Show us the fruit of the plant, right? What are you producing? The average man today isn't fighting lions. No, he's fighting distraction, comfort, convenience, dopamine addiction, right? Endless entertainment. For most of human history, survival required discipline. You need to wake up at the crack of dawn. You and your boys were going to go hunt down this gazelle for 24 miles and then carry it on your back so that you guys could have dinner tomorrow evening, right? That was what it was like, And now you can open up your smartphone and order DoorDash. And I am guilty of that. I do that all the time. I really do, right? I'm not up here preaching at you guys. I'm sitting right there in that chair listening to myself talk, thinking I sound like a nerd, right? But today, discipline requires intention. We have so many options, right? And with all of these options, with all of this power, right? With all of this effortless acquirement or ability to acquire things, right? That creates problems. It creates a cognitive dissonance, right? And if you're constantly doing that dopamine seeking behavior, right? Then eventually what you're doing is you're desensitizing yourself to the work it actually takes to become the person that you want to be. Devotion requires becoming intentional rather than impulsive. And then we've got community. One of the most blatant and powerful facts that I've learned from doing men's work and helping to facilitate men's work is that men need other men. Simple fact, right? We like to be standalone. We like to be a lone wolf, right? Men can be dramatic like that sometimes, right? Because that's what it is. We're being dramatic. Let's be honest with ourselves, guys. Like, come on, you know. But the fact of the matter is that we have 500,000 to 525,000 male suicides that happen globally a year. You know how many minutes are in a year? 5,000 or 500 and 225,600 minutes. That's almost a male suicide every single minute. There's a problem, right? From this moment right now, we have 192 days left. That's 276,480 male lives. Have a conversation, right? Call somebody up. Listen to what they've got to say. Talk about your problems, right? You can lead by example. Sometimes not everything's great, and I know you don't always have the time to answer, right? Like, it's like sometimes you're just passing by and people's like, oh, hey, how are you? And you're like, oh, everything's cool. I'm fine, right? But really, like, your bills are piling up, right? You're in massive amounts of pain. You might have lost a child. You might have got your heart broken. All these things are valid and they need to be talked about. So, another thing that is really, really important that I feel like we've lost is the rite of passage. I don't know about you guys, but when I was 16, there was nothing more that I would have loved to get together with a pack of my boys and go sharpen some sticks and hunt down like a wild boar or something, or go do some crazy task. You know what I mean? Like, but there's something to be said about collectively doing something that makes you a man or crosses that threshold, right? It's a sense of responsibility, a sense of integration, a sense of things that need to happen, a sense of they're doing construction over there right now, right? So rites of passage are important, and last but not least, chill with your boys, please. You only get so much time with them in this life, right? It gets busy, right? I understand you got family, right? You got work, right? You got your own health and wellness to take care of, but it is so important, in fact, that this woman, Dr. Ellen Langer, right, did a whole study on this. It's called the counterclockwise study, right? What she did is she got a group of elderly men, 80 years old plus, right? They spent a week living in an environment recreated to look exactly how it was 20 years earlier. And they were encouraged to act as they were living in that time, right? Not just reminiscing about the past, but like actually experiencing it. So you know what they did? They sat around, they had beers, they joked and laughed, right? They barbecued, they went to the beach, they played volleyball, they came back, right? After just 1 week, researchers found improvements in strength and flexibility, posture and gait, grip strength, hearing and vision, memory and cognition, and overall appearance of aging. Just by hanging with your boys. If you take one thing away from this talk, no, I'm just kidding. There's so many other important things like that's also necessary, but like seriously, like community is important, right? So shout out to Dr. Ellen Langer, right? First woman or first Harvard professor who's a woman to get tenured, by the way. So she definitely deserved a shout out. Super impressive. And she wrote a whole book on it if you're interested. Essential number 4, oxygen and exercise, right? Breath work, super key. Why does breath work matter? The average man takes 20,000 to 25,000 breaths a day, right? Every single breath is a message to your brain, either telling your nervous system that you're safe or you're under threat. Every single one, right? Most of us, we have this pattern of fast, shallow breathing, especially in Western society. We tend to breathe up here into our shoulders and into your neck, right? That's a lot of the times why people get stiff necks and shoulders or upper back pain. It actually comes from improper breathing. You're supposed to breathe into your diaphragm. In fact, your pelvic floor is an accessory respiratory muscle. Fun fact, right? So your breath should start all the way down here and then work your way up into your chest and shoulders, right? That's slow, controlled breathing, right? So the fast, shallow breathing, that's you're activating your sympathetic nervous system, you're increasing your heart rate, elevating your cortisol, right? increases your muscle tension and it narrows your focus, right? But it does enhance your fight or flight response. So if you need to run from something, a nice little before you do it, right? Or if you need to hit a PR in the gym, that helps hyperventilating, right? Now your slow controlled breathing, this is you're activating your parasympathetic nervous system. You're lowering your heart rate, reducing your stress hormones, improving your digestion, improving your recovery, and enhancing your emotional regulation. So by taking a deep breath, right? And we already, to some degree, do that, right? Because, when somebody or something does something that gets on your nerves and you don't want to respond, the first thing you do is, okay, right? It's innate. Follow it. So nasal breathing is more important than mouth breathing. And the benefits are because you produce nitric oxide, which we've already talked about, right? Perhaps better oxygen utilization, better nervous system regulation, and improved sleep. I meant to put a slide in here about it, but I totally forgot, but mouth tape is awesome. Anybody who snores? Yes. Actually, dream recovery tape specifically is my favorite kind because it actually moisturizes your lips, and it has like vitamins and minerals in it. So it's really good for your face. So just saying. The highlights is diaphragmatic breathing, right? You want to really breathe into that diaphragm and also speak from there as well. Because a lot of us tend to speak from upper chest, but when you relax, you speak from your diaphragm and you can project more, right? And rib cage expansion, right? That's where posture comes in. Flaring the rib cage, right? So we can do a simple breath, simple exercise breathing for performance, right? So what you're going to do, you're going to take a 4-second inhale, and let out for 6 seconds. Who in here felt their body's chemistry change just from doing that? Right? Are you aware of feeling more calm, more grounded, more capable of handling the world? Breathing. Who would have thought? One of the most simple, effective means of nervous system regulation is not a $400 device that they're trying to advertise to you on TikTok or Facebook or whatever, right? It's just breathing, right? The effects: lower stress, improves focus, and increases your heart rate variability, which is an important measurement for how your nervous system is functioning. If you have a low heart rate variability, that means that your body doesn't adapt to stress as well. That means that when something happens or something jumps out at you, your heart rate should spike momentarily and then calm down, right? Or if you're in a nice relaxed state, your heart rate should drop momentarily and then rise back up. If you don't have that flexibility or that limber heart rate, that's a sign that your nervous system is rigid, right? Anybody know who this guy is over here? Who?
The Russian guy?
No, he's actually, I'm not sure if he's Russian, but they call him the Iceman. His name is Wim Hof, right? And he's famous for doing these crazy swims, these crazy underwater swims in freezing temperatures, right? And he can hold his breath for an insane amount of time, and he breaks all these world records all the time. And he's just sitting out there on a glacier in some board shorts, drenched, right? I know I would be cold. But his breathing technique that he's pioneered has allowed him to master his body's chemistry and his body's temperature, right? And he teaches people how to do this, and they go out and they do all these crazy excursions. They're climbing all these frozen mountains in board shorts, and they're having all these crazy things happen to them, right? If you're interested, he has a basic 11-minute breathwork session that pops up on YouTube. Just searching Wim Hof breathwork, and it's crazy. It's like transcendent. You'll change your life, seriously. Now on to exercise, right? So corporation, or in talking about the function of exercise or the parts of exercise, we've got your tendons, mobility, or your tendons, mobility, and your fascia, right? So your muscles pull, your tendons transmit force, and your fascia connects. I meant to say muscles, not mobility. Cardio is for longevity, right? Your muscle is your metabolic currency. Okay, so the more muscle you have, the more that you can survive in extreme situations, right? But if you're only training your muscles and you're not doing cardio, right, then you won't be able to pump the blood and get that circulation that you need. So you can't constantly be building. Sometimes you have to do things in order to support the infrastructure, right? Which is why cardio is key, as much as I hate running, right? So you will catch me on that Stairmaster, okay? Benefits of muscle: testosterone support, longevity, glucose regulation, confidence, obviously, and injury resistance, okay? There's something to be said about training your tendons, right? Tendons are an extremely important and extremely undertrained aspect of Western physical culture, right? They act as springs, right? So when you're running, right, your Achilles tendon acts as a spring, and that's what propels you off of the ground. The stronger and more sturdy that tendon is, the more effortless that movement becomes. Now, if you don't have strong tendons, this is where you start to get degeneration in your joints. This is where you start to get different pains in different areas. And most people in our culture are so concerned with training the muscles for aesthetics that they don't train the tendons. And that is what provides longevity. So I wanted to take a second to go over some basic ways to train your tendons, right? So phase one is capacity and stability. This is an isometric hold. For those of you unfamiliar with the term isometric, that means that you're just staying in one position the whole time, right? Like a dead hang, which is amazing for the shoulders, right? The goal is to build tendon tolerance, reduce pain, and improve joint stability, right? So if you have a joint that's constantly causing you issues, say your elbow or say your shoulder, starting off with an isometric hold or a dead hang or just a lunge, if it's a knee or an ankle, will change your life, right? It's got to be a long time though. You got to shoot for about 60 seconds or more. Some people say 30 to 60 seconds, but I'm going to challenge all of you, right? 60 seconds or higher. Then you move on to strength development, right? This is your heavy, slow resistance training. So you're not jerking a weight, right? Very intentional, right? This is going to be dominant in your eccentric loading, which means that on your way down, going as slow as you can, right? Even better if you have somebody lift a weight that's normally too heavy for you to rep to the top and you struggle to hold it, right? Eccentric exercise is really, really great for building muscle, but it's fantastic for strengthening your tendons after you already have the capacity and the stability. Do not skip step one, okay? Phase three is your elasticity and energy storage, right? So we talk about that spring, that Achilles tendon. This is where you get your plyometrics. You're hopping, you're jumping, you're bounding, right? The goal is to teach your tendons to store and release energy like springs so that the next time an elderly person trips over something or they go for a fall, they can hop and avoid falling on the ground and breaking their hip because their body has that elasticity, right? This is why tendons are so important. And then last is athletic expression, right? This is optional. If you just want to like ball on your friends at 24-hour fitness, right? This is a great way to do that. Train your tendons, right? Your sprinting, your agility, your sports, my personal favorite, martial arts, and convert your tendon strength into real world performance or strength, right? But you have to start at step one. In fact, I recommend that everybody in here have some type of isometric exercise regimen where 3 times a week you just do holds, right? Holding your arms out, standing on one foot, right? Don't knock over the laptop. Lifting your legs, right? Holding a squat, a wall sit, right? Lunges. Those are all fantastic isometric exercises that are extremely underrated, that if we just did that more often, the rate of injury and complaints and extremities would plummet. Just no one's ever taught you that. There should be a book that says how to be in your body. Actually, there might be a book, but if there's not, I'm writing one. Okay, so be on the lookout for that. And then we've got your detoxification and recovery. This is your 5th essentials, right? It's not just a juice cleanse, but they can work. The reason why I put this really nice nature scene up here is because sometimes you have to detox from noise, right? From certain people, right? We all got somebody that we love, but you're around them for too long, you start to get a little queasy feeling in your stomach. And that's a good sign that you shouldn't be around them too much, right? Oh, I don't know what happened to the photos here. Your detox systems are your liver, your kidneys, your skin, your lungs, your colon, and your lymphatics. So just imagine a liver right there, right? Some kidneys and a lymphatic system, okay? You want to support with hydration, movement, sleep, and nutrition. So if you're not doing those 4 basic things, you can't detox, okay? It's really, really important that you have those basic things going before you try to stress the system, because if you don't have your basics and you add more stress to the system, what's going to happen? You're going to break down, okay? So step one, before starting any detox system, is to stop the toxins. It doesn't make any sense to detox if you're constantly putting an influx of all these different things into your body, right? So we need to clean up your food. We need to make sure that we're not drinking terrible tap water, right? We need to make sure that we're not breathing in toxic fumes on a regular basis. Fun fact, there are over 100,000 different toxic chemicals in our environment that weren't around 200 years ago. And 80,000 of them haven't been tested for their impact on humans. So detoxing your body is not a suggestion. It is something that you need to do on a regular basis. I suggest quarterly, at least twice a year, right? So we got to change your environment, change your cosmetics. For us, I guess that would just be like deodorant, right? Or the soaps that we use, the cleaners and the containers, okay? Here's some signs you need to detox. If you're moody, depressed, or irritable, detox your body. Anxiety and depression, detox your body. Insomnia, weight fluctuation, or trouble losing weight, right? Bloating, indigestion, stomach pain, junk food cravings, constipation, white or yellow tongue film, food intolerances, fatigue after meals, waking up tired, diet high in processed foods, achy, swollen joints and muscles, hormonal imbalance, and skin issues like acne, eczema, rosacea, psoriasis, itching, or blotching are all signs that you need to detoxify your body. Right? Now, notice how some of these are also hormonal issues, right? Or some of these might also be digestive issues. Your body is a complex system, and all of these systems work together, right? So if you work really well at one, say you start getting adjusted, right? You start doing some chiropractic care, your body is naturally going to start to detox more effectively. You start detoxing, your nervous system is going to work better. Your hormones are going to work better. There's nothing that's an isolated system in the body, okay? Here's some detox methods. Really good one, sweating in the sauna, right? It's nice. Maybe you got a steam room and it smells like eucalyptus in there. That's always cool, right? This right here is a golden toilet, right? You need to be able to poop in order to detox. If you're not going to the bathroom regularly, you can't detox. And if you are going to the bathroom regularly, great. By the way, this is on sale for $3,500 if anybody here is interested, right? Juice cleanse does work. Wouldn't recommend it for anybody that has any issues with insulin because of the levels of sugar, and you're not getting that natural fiber that it takes to bind to the sugar and kick out of your body. There's a supplement that we sell called Pronac. N-acetylcysteine is an isomer form of an essential amino acid, which upregulates your body's production of glutathione, which is commonly understood to be your body's number one detoxifier. However, melatonin does do a really good job also, which is why sleep is so important. Okay. And then lastly, we have the detox system, cell and body, right? So the body detox, which you take at night, goes through your gastrointestinal system, soaks up all the, disgusting stuff in there with binder, right? And then you poop it out in the morning. And sometimes it looks really strange. I'm not going to hold you, right? And then you got your cell detox, and that forces your body to excrete all of the disgusting things from your cells so that your body detox can and take it back out later, right? So these are all some really great detox methods. There are more, right? To start to wrap things up, right? Because we're kind of hitting that 1 hour mark. In order to be a 5 essentials man, right? You have to move well, you have to fuel your body well, you got to think well, you got to recover well, and you have to lead well, right? All this information isn't just something for you to take and keep in and just make changes, right? Because the fact of the matter is that, there aren't as many people in this room as we thought there would be, right? Or should be, right? And that is unfortunate because there are people that need to hear this message, right? So we got to get out there and we got to share that. And then especially to guys that, say that they're too busy to sit down and come to a class, right? Which is every man ever, right? The fact that you all came here on a Monday night, I'm like, wow, thank you guys for being here because I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate that investment in yourself. And I hope that you found something beneficial. So without further ado, we do have an invitation to heal. If this is your first time here, we are offering a complimentary first appointment, right? Which includes a nervous system scan, your initial consultation, your neurological evaluation, and a full series of x-rays if needed. This is normally a $340 offer, but tonight we're giving it to you complimentary. So if you feel like you're stuck in physical pain, if your life has got some extra chaos, if you feel like you're experiencing burnout or loss of self or hormonal dysregulation, you don't need more discipline, right? You don't need to force things into overdrive. You just need some nervous system support, okay? Last couple of things here. We do also have a device called the StemWave, right? The StemWave is honestly amazing. It's probably one of the best investments I've made in a long time, with the exception of buying this business and becoming a chiropractor. But what it does is it uses electrohydraulic force. So it has ionized water inside of it, and it charges that ionized water with an electric shock, and it produces a sound wave. And what that wave does is it rapidly compresses and expands the cells, helping to detoxify your cells, drive out inflammation, and then bring in new nutrients so they can heal. And over time, mesenchymal stem cells, which are floating around inside of your body, get attracted to this area, and your body can literally regrow new tissue in that area. So we've seen some amazing things happen where people have been in chronic pain for years and years, and after a couple of sessions, they're like, wow, this is the first time that I've been able to walk without feeling pain in my ankle, right? Or knees or low back. So that's excellent there too. And last but not least, feel free to connect with us, right? If you're interested in a community partnership or booking a talk, definitely reach out. If not, you can find us at discoverchirosj.com or at discoverchirosj. We did recently change our email, so it's not info@drtjosborne.com anymore. It is info@discoverchirosj.com. And then obviously, that's our phone number. So that concludes my talk. Thank you so much for coming out this evening. I hope we learned something. Thank you. Cool.